Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the CryptoCannaVerse show, an international faith-based show that serves as a hub for visionary entrepreneurs operating at four key domains: Christ, cryptocurrency, cannabis, and CPAs. Our goal is to help grow, educate, and inspire within the four C's by connecting founders with investors, advisors, and partnerships. All faiths are welcome on the show, and the show is hosted by Crystal Wampler and Alan Lau. And today, our guest co-host is Jordan Tritt, founder and CEO of the Panther Group, who brings extensive experience and expertise to the cannabis industry. As principal of day-to-day manager of two cannabis venture funds, Jordan has been a key player in the sector since 2014, strategically deploying $40 million across 50 companies. Before venturing into cannabis, Jordan received his master's degree at the University of Michigan in accounting and held pivotal roles such as CFO, VP of finance, and controller for high growth private companies and venture funds, successfully raising over $30 million. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you, Crystal. Excited to be here.
We are so happy to have you. Thank you. Jordan, where are you calling in from?
I am remoting in from Atlanta, Georgia, the Buckhead specifically, for those who know this metropolitan area.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining us. Looking back on your journey from traditional finance to cannabis, what initially drew you to this industry and how has your perspective evolved over the years?
Yeah, so I entered the industry full time in 2017. Just prior to that, my first real experience in the cannabis industry, I went out to one of the larger trade shows called MJ BizCon and met with a bunch of people, just got to really immerse myself in the people and the industry and the opportunity. And as you noted, I've always been in early stage companies. I've worked in entrepreneurial environments. So this industry being in a lot of ways, full of startups was appealing to me from that perspective. From a cultural and personality standpoint, I really jive with a lot of people that are in the industry. They tend to be open-minded. They are very like future forward focused, and a lot of times are passionate about cannabis. And that is something that is important to me. As an operator, I've always resonated with the idea of the why and what's the purpose behind the business that you're working in. And so for me, the industry as a whole is an industry that I really believe in. In the prior to going live here, we were talking in the intro, and someone mentioned about the decentralization of crypto and how that's a concept that really is a value that is embraced. And so the values of the industry are important. The stage of the industry is important, and I've always liked to and been attracted to opportunities where I can have my fingerprint all over it and really make an impact. And that's what drew me to the industry initially.
That is wonderful. You actually attended MJ BizCon back in the day when, all the founders and up and coming cannabis titans, were launching. And I found so much value, attending MJ BizCon back then. Now it's a little bit more where, the big companies and founders are sending their salespeople. And so it's kind of a little watered down, but you do make a lot of deals like outside the convention now. So it's pretty cool. Is that one of your favorite places to go now, or what's one of your favorite conventions?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, which is that trade show has evolved. It is definitely still a show where most people like to come in and attend it. So it's one of those once a year things. So you do get to see a lot of people. It's really a bellwether for the industry. So every year you go and you can get a sense of what's happening and where the industry is. And I think we'll probably get to it a little bit later. And in this discussion, but there were some trends that popped up and that intrigued me, and I didn't necessarily understand the scale to which some of those things had evolved until I had gotten to MJ BizCon, and then that really framed the way that the rest of the show went for me. And then moving forward, some of our priorities as a firm were impacted by that conversation. So yeah, that show is important. There are other trade shows that are spread out and serve different niches, as you talked about, that are more specific. And so, and that's really a case and a good example of what's happened in the cannabis industry. There are the original companies that are still around, but they've evolved and developed in different ways. And then there are newcomers that have come and filled in some of the gaps that are more of a niche strategy. And I think, it's just a matter of, and a lot of times just making sure from a business standpoint that the problem you're solving is big enough. And that is something that comes up sometimes in the cannabis space.
Absolutely. You've strategically deployed over $40 million across 50 cannabis companies through your venture funds. What key characteristics or traits do you identify in successful cannabis businesses?
Yeah, so we've invested in, as you noted, a lot of different businesses. So that's been part of our strategy, is to spread the wealth, so to speak, and be diversified. There are commonalities amongst the businesses, and at the end of the day, a lot of it has to do with the people, the stage of the business, what they've proven thus far, and how quickly and how attainable is the growth that they're talking about. So it needs to make sense. The people need to be the right people. But specifically, we're looking for entrepreneurs, people who are very comfortable and familiar with early stage companies. You're going to get knocked down a lot of times. There are a lot of opportunities to give up. And, as you hear from many successful entrepreneurs, like it's just, you have to have that absolute undying commitment to making it happen. Otherwise it's really, really challenging. So that entrepreneurial spirit and experience is critical. Coachability. So we do not invest in groups that say to us, "Oh, we've got everything figured out. All we need is capital, and just let us handle it." We don't believe that, especially in this industry where it is so nuanced. Being able to have access to individual resources. It's not reasonable that everyone can handle that themselves. So that understanding that it takes a village and relying on other people, that in and of itself comes from experience. And so we're looking for people who have been there, done that. In cannabis, everyone says, "I've got the best cannabis. I grow the best products." So 1,000 times. I'm sure crypto has its own version of that. So we are looking for something that is unique, that has some protection, like any normal business. From a communication standpoint, it's important that we build a relationship with the entrepreneur. So we're asking a lot of questions to just really see how they answer it. And we don't have a prescribed answer that we need, but we need to get comfortable with how they answer it and the consistency and transparency that they communicate with. And so that's something that is important. And then from like the business standpoint, they need to have a team. They need to have traction already. We're really at this point less involved on the early stage companies. There need to be something that we can see has shown that it's been adopted by customers, and it just needs some additional support in a bunch of ways. We're not afraid to help and roll up our sleeves. We just need to know that the business has gotten to a certain point. That's just part of our investment thesis. And there needs to be some growth, and some quick growth that can be attained. We're definitely in a business where speed is a big part of the game.
It most definitely takes a village. Can you please let our viewers know, where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so we are very active from a social media and website perspective. So our website, thepanthergroup.co. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Check my messages daily there. So look me up on LinkedIn and email Jordan at thepanthergroup.co. Happy to have a lot of conversations and see if we can collaborate both with operators as well as other CPAs and people who have clients or investors that may want to get exposure to the space and haven't done so thus far.
Thank you, Jordan. We are booking guest co-hosts for February and speakers for May 2024. If you would like to be a guest speaker or a guest co-host, please reach out to Crystal at thecryptocannaverseshow.com. And if you'd like to learn more about the companies, note we are not an investment advisor, so please do your own due diligence. Today's show is being broadcast live across various platforms, including LinkedIn, Facebook groups, Twitter, YouTube, with a total reach of over 1.2 million. Our strategic network includes venture capital firms, family offices, blockchain and crypto hedge funds, business owners, Web3 launchpads, CPAs, attorneys serving high net worth clientele, investors, and angel investors. Alan, how you doing today?
Doing great and good. How about you? How's everyone doing?
Good. Good, thank you. Good. Thanks for asking. What Bible verse do you have for us today?
I love the Bible verse you chose today, Crystal. I was meditating on this earlier and praying. It comes from actually the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. I was sharing with you earlier, we're studying in the book of John. It kind of ties into this verse as well. Is because God has a plan for you, and God has a future, and you continue to have faith and hope in the Lord that it will provide you with the right path. And it ties into everything that we do on a daily basis, is to always have hope, always look to the future, and always trust in the Lord with all your heart and all things you do, because he has a great plan that is revealed over time. And it's very, very uplifting when you hear this verse.
Thank you, Alan. When I thought of that verse, I thought of, one single path that you're going down, but it can either be, a fantastic path, loaded with all of these amazing things, or it can be a path that is not so fantastic, but it's still the same path. So that's how I kind of see it. But thank you so much for sharing that with us. I appreciate that very much. The CryptoCannaVerse show presents speaker Taylor Zork, CPA, today, Friday, January 16th. Friday, January 12th, 2024. Taylor Zork is a CPA who has been focusing on the crypto industry since 2018. He has direct experience as the CFO of multiple crypto startups, most notably Trustswap, a platform that offers audited smart contracts for token and liquidity locks to help prevent rug pulls and increase transparency with newly launched projects. Shortly after its inception, Trustswap evolved into a launchpad, NFT marketplace, and portfolio tracker via the acquisition of the crypto app. Taylor has deep experience with numerous DeFi protocols and the accounting challenges that come with them: LP tokens, unrealized gains from LP fees, TGEs, valuing illiquid altcoins, etc. Taylor co-founded an app-based private community, CryptoCFOs, to aid in educating new accounting professionals who want to enter the space through continuing professional education, and to facilitate discussions around best practices for existing thought leaders within the industry. Taylor's passion is to help solve new accounting challenges as the industry evolves. Welcome, Taylor.
Thanks for having me, Crystal. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being here. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your community?
Yeah, so the CryptoCFOs community is a community of over 300 accounting and tax professionals, as well as finance professionals from across the globe. We're represented in over 34 countries. My specific focus and that of the founders is US based. I'm a CPA based out of my license is in Massachusetts, but our goal with the community is to further the industry by increasing adoption through onboarding and on-ramping more accounting and tax professionals. Because when I joined the space, I noticed that there was a huge gap in that realm, and I think that it's important because blockchains inherently are accounting tools, that more accounting and tax professionals understand this industry. And I think it's going to go the way of internet accountants in the early days of the internet, where people would be specialized as an internet accountant, when now you don't really need to specify that. People assume that you can do things with email. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. How do you think the new ETF, the 11 new spot ETFs for Bitcoin, is going to affect your industry?
I think it brings an added spotlight to the industry for sure. I think those of us who have already been in the industry, it doesn't really make a huge difference for us, because, of course, most people who know about the technology would much rather hold their own Bitcoin than invest through a bank or like the traditional finance system. But it does open up the floodgates for people in either different generations that are interested in the asset, but are afraid of the technological impacts. So I think it opens the door to greater adoption. Although the people of us who are already here probably aren't going to be, flocking towards it as much, because we'd probably rather hold on to real Bitcoin. But yeah, I think that definitely brings more highlight to the industry.
For sure. Matt, coming over to you, what do you think about the Bitcoin spot ETF? And, I hear, can you touch bases on a little bit about, the fees that these ETFs are charging are just insane.
Yeah, and just like what Taylor said, it's definitely a positive for the industry. It's going to bring a lot more attention. There's a lot of institutions waiting on the sidelines for more regulation. Yeah, someone like us might not want to do it, buy the ETF just from not being able to hold our own Bitcoin, but that's not going to matter for a lot of other institutions. So it definitely brings a positive spotlight. No matter whether Bitcoin goes up in the short term, that doesn't really matter. But long term, it's a very a positive movement forward for the entire crypto space. And as far as the fees, we're just going to have to see how those work out. They seem to really high to start, but at least they're already coming down even before the ETF was approved. So hopefully that gets a little bit better and better. But yeah, I'm excited to see this finally come around, and it could lead to Ethereum ETFs and other things down the road, which will be another positive as well.
Agreed. I'm really looking forward to Ripple as well. That would be fantastic. So, coming back up to you, Taylor, you witnessed Trustswap's evolution from, smart contracts to the DeFi platform. How did this shape your understanding of accounting practices in the ever-changing crypto landscape?
I think that, ultimately we launched in DeFi summer, which was July of 2020. And so that was, for those of us who were in the space back then, that was like just before the Uniswap airdrop. So for those who are unfamiliar, Uniswap is a decentralized exchange. It was one of the, more prominent ones at the beginning of DeFi summer, as we refer to it. And so as we evolved as a project, the accounting impacts of what we were doing wasn't really forefront in the mind of people, of the people that were guiding the narrative of the company. So it was more of like here, we're going to start a bunch of fires. Now you go put them out kind of thing. And so I leaned on other professionals in the space. I would have discussions with Dr. Sean Stein-Smith, who's a professor and very active in the crypto accounting community, along with other CFOs that were operating in the industry, and would just have meetings of the minds. We would just hop on Zoom and we would be like, okay, I have this new accounting challenge. Let's put on our traditional finance hat, look at similar assets that this kind of mirrors, and try to figure out an accounting treatment for it. Because, as we know, regulation is going at a snail's pace, and the crypto industry is moving at light speed. So as we evolved, I kind of had to just put on the accounting hat and look at what the inherent structure of what was happening was going on. So really, it was a lot about reflecting what was happening in the TradFi space into the crypto space, and trying to apply rules that way, common sense. But yeah, it's a challenge for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do we have any comments? Jordan, were you making a comment there?
Yeah, I was just smiling because I had been to a lot of family office events and I knew the commonality between crypto and cannabis. And then you hear a lot of the conversation that Taylor's having with like how fast the industry is moving relative to regulation and these things that from a headline standpoint are very good, and from a long-term viability of the industry progressions, but for people in the industry, it's not as relevant. So there's just so many similarities between these two industries that are starting up and full of people who have a real mission-driven purpose, which obviously resonates with this podcast. So I think it's really interesting. I'm sure you get this all the time, Crystal. You have these realizations, but the commonality that I hear between the two industries is, we can have a support group for each other. And you talked about how hard it is. We're always, every conversation has to end with, oh, this space is so difficult. It's funny.
Yeah, I think that coming from the cannabis industry as well, we see a lot of the overlap there. And I think that we operate on the fringes a little bit, and it makes it fun. I mean, that's why I'm in this industry, is because from a tax and accounting perspective, cannabis, I really was in it at the beginning, and then outside of 280E and 471C, for those of us who are familiar with the IRC, related to cannabis. Outside of that, it's like there's not a whole lot that you need to be like learning. Obviously, it's staying up to date with that stuff. So crypto for me was more exciting because it's, I like to be intellectually challenged with the evolution in that way, where it's like, okay, no one has any rules on how to account for this, but let's try to figure out what makes sense from a theory standpoint. And so, yeah, definitely makes it a challenge. Like, I would find out after everyone else, that we were on a new chain, and now I've got to figure out how to account for it. And a lot of times I'd figure it out because I'd see funds seemingly disappear, and then I'd realize that they just were migrated over to another chain. And I'm like, okay, great. Now I got another wallet to deal with. But yeah, in business, sometimes, especially crypto, because it's a lot of fast moving stuff, accountants are usually the last to be, their opinion doesn't necessarily matter, or it didn't used to. And I think now that is starting to change for the better, because it really matters, and it can cost you a lot in the future if you're not taking that proactively. So
yeah, and I just wanted to make a comment that it's really impressive, Taylor, that you guys got started in DeFi summer. I consider that the Wild West, and I was part of the Uniswap airdrop. And for you to be able to see it from that point to come all the way to today is really a great perspective that not many people have, because a lot of them might have started maybe 6 months to a year ago. So the perspective that you have is really impressive, and very few people I know really started back then. And that's great timing on your part, but it just shows that you're ahead of the curve, as far as everybody else goes. And that's pretty impressive.
And you know what? Bear markets are the best time to build. I know that DeFi summer obviously was, everyone, you could, it was impossible not to make money during the bull run, but building, we started the community a year ago. I think in 2 days now, we're coming up on our 1 year anniversary, and it was the perfect time to be building, because you can kind of come back in the next bull run, and now you've gotten all this, you're leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else. So yeah, it feels good, and it's fun too.
That is great questions and comments, you guys. What about the halving coming up? That's going to be huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we'll see a lot of. Obviously, we've got the inflation rate's going to be obviously cut in half again, and I think that coupled with the ETF, and the fact that as those on the call know, any Bitcoin that is represented in those ETFs has to be held by those issuers. So whether those deals are happening over the counter to reduce the price, to keep the to make sure that the price doesn't balloon, so they're buying into their own hype, But I think that there's a lot of signals that show that this is going to be a good next couple of years for crypto. And yeah, the halving years are always exciting years to be a part of the industry for sure.
Thank you. You know, your background has dealt with challenges with LP tokens and valuing illiquid altcoins. You know, can you elaborate on these challenges and share your solutions for navigating them?
Yeah, absolutely. So LP tokens or liquidity provider tokens are what you used to receive when you would operate on Uniswap v2. So Uniswap I think is now in v4, version 4, which so you would deposit liquidity on a decentralized exchange, and if I wanted to, for example, put $100,000 worth of liquidity in Ethereum, I would have to match that with the other side of that entry, which would be 100,000 of, let's say it was a Ethereum and USDC pool. I would have to do $100,000 of each if I wanted to put in that much liquidity, and in return, I would get a certain number of LP tokens, which would essentially represent my share of that liquidity pool. And so back in Uniswap v2, it was a lot easier, I guess, in my mind, to account for it because you're disposing of two assets and then receiving a new asset that represents the cumulative rewards that you've earned by being part of that liquidity pool. And just to take a quick step back for those people who aren't as familiar with these things, you know, decentralized exchanges run off of smart contracts that are governed by mathematical formulas in the form of automated market makers. So essentially, it's a numerator and a denominator, and as people take, let's say you're buying ETH out of the numerator, it automatically adjusts the price as you're going. And so it's like an order. It's like having an order book that's always constantly automatically fulfilling orders, so you don't have to have someone that's matching your exact price, right? The price is reflective of how much you're buying or selling, and so these LP tokens accrue fees because you pay a 0.3% fee on each transaction, and the fees go to that pool. So your portion of the pool that you own accrues and accrues and accrues. And so there's unrealized gains baked into those. But things get more and more complicated when you go from having an LP token, which you dispose of in order to withdraw your liquidity from this pool, and now have an NFT that doesn't get disposed of. And so there's a lot of questions around, you know, is the liquidity pool an actual third party because it's governed by code, or is it just like, who are you interacting with? And so there's a lot of challenges that arise with regards to whether there's another entity and whether it actually constitutes disposing of your assets and things like that. So there's a bunch of challenges that come along with that. And then remind me of the second part of your question. It was LP tokens, and then what was it?
Yeah, so the second part was, can you elaborate on these challenges and share your solutions, like the solutions part? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so there are a lot of different subledgers that allow this to be done a lot easier. I know that Crypto recently just is beta testing an LP token tracking tool. So you can treat them as ins and outs, where it's almost like a transfer to a different wallet, but then you have to recognize the gains after the fact. Again, all this stuff that we're talking about doesn't have clear guidance on how, like, there's no accounting rules because we're, you know, racing ahead and then waiting for the regulation to catch up. But the way I see it is, like, you're disposing of an asset because you no longer have control of that ETH and that USDC. And rather than it being a deposit slip almost, because you don't necessarily get back the same amount when you pull it out, you're at risk for impermanent loss and a lot of other kind of risks that the scope of which we won't be able to get into on this call. But there are tools, different subledgers allow you to account for this. Integral is another great tool. So a lot of these subledgers are now rolling out functionality to be able to help track this stuff. So rather than having to calculate it yourself, which I had to do back in the day, you know, we're getting the aid of software now. So that's been a great help to the industry as well.
Yeah, I've noticed that the software has been getting better and better to be able to track a lot of stuff that you're working with DeFi. Are you just so far ahead of the IRS? I know you mentioned that before. It's got to be a little bit frustrating because you're kind of like learning all these new things and able to break it all down and decipher it But then to turn around and ask the IRS, what's going on, or how can we help, or how do we work with all these any regulations? There's just none there to do. I mean, how frustrating is that, and how far ahead of you are they, or is there anyone even to talk to about any of it?
It's a challenge with the IRS. I think that people often think that like the IRS, isn't, because crypto accounting is a challenge and it's complicated. They think that like the IRS is never going to catch up. And that's not really the question to be asking. I know that's not the question you're asking, but I think it's more of like they can leverage tools that exist that help them analyze things on chain. But with regards to like them coming out with regulations for us to be able to kind of put in a framework, really what we rely on is disclosures on returns so that we can kind of justify what we're doing by just explaining it, and so that we have a CYA. I know we're not supposed to curse on this podcast, so I'm going to just use the acronym, but we do those CYA practices so that we can make sure that we're outlining the position that we're taking, and also have something to reference back to say, hey, you guys probably didn't have this on your radar. We've been doing this. A good example of that is like lending and borrowing on DeFi. Like I personally, I have digital assets that I have posted on tools like Aave that allow you to post collateral and then borrow against that collateral. And as we know, loans are not taxable income. And so you can effectively get the benefit of selling your crypto without actually selling your crypto, as long as you don't get into those collaterals, the liquidation thresholds. So the tough part here is now justifying to the IRS, where they see that I pulled out, let's say, 20 grand off of Coinbase. Coinbase will report that to the IRS as on a 1099, showing that I had income of 10, 20,000 or whatever. And what I do is I just disclose to them, hey, I went on Aave via this transaction hash. I'll list out that transaction hash and I'll say, hey, I borrowed this much against my crypto. There should be no taxable impact of this, but just letting you guys know. And I think that taking steps like that allow you to leverage the tools while also kind of keeping the IRS up to speed, so that if they do come after you and down the road and say, hey, we show that you have $20,000 that you never reported to us, and you can say, well, I did disclose that this was from this transaction and it's actually a loan and I'm paying it back and it's verifiable on chain. So really it's more about taking the documentation and the reporting into your own hands and being really proactive about it, which I don't think most people are not doing. Most people are not even checking the box if they're supposed to be checking the box on the 1040. So that's one of the reasons why we created a firm called Crypto Tax Trouble, to help people with tax resolution work when they do get letters from the IRS, because those are starting to come out like the printing press, like they just turned on the money printer again. They're going brrr. So we're seeing a lot of those letters come out, and I think people will be surprised at how on top of this the IRS is.
Well, it's in the last year and a half, we've kind of been in a bear market, so there hasn't been a ton of profits. But when that turns around, yes, you're absolutely right about that. And it's also just really refreshing to have the crypto knowledge that you have coming from a CPA. I just wanted to let you know. Well, I'll definitely want to stay in touch.
Yeah, that's awesome. Would love that.
I think it's interesting how both cannabis and crypto have this, this, I don't know, this poor thought that like everybody's trying to launder money. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that people who kind of take that stance, it's like it's really not a good vehicle to launder money. I mean, as we know, it's a public. Most blockchains are public, and tools like Chainalysis are really good at identifying people on chain. Especially U.S. citizens. I would say that the vast majority, like upwards of 99% of people, have KYC'd at some place in time on chain. And so from that, if you've KYC'd anywhere, it's really easy to kind of locate associated wallets and things like that. And when you have tools like Tornado Cash on the ETH network being sanctioned, I mean, they're on top. It's really not a good place to launder money. The US dollar cash is a lot better of a tool to launder money with than Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of those tools. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think that because there's a lack of understanding, people kind of believe the misinformation. definitely laundering of, money laundering happens with Bitcoin. You can do so with like, I guess you could do so with like Bitcoin ATMs and things like that. But I mean, it's definitely not as prevalent as it is with the US dollar in actual physical hard currency. Lots of stats to prove that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and just going,
I just think
oh,
they're
go ahead,
running out of
Matt.
excuses. I just think they're running out of excuses to keep crypto down. They're going to hold on to that one for dear life. And I totally agree. I mean, cash is a million times better way to launder, and I don't even want to go into how many fines the banks have paid over the years of the laundering money and false accounts and all that stuff. But yeah, there's still a handful of people, and we know their names in Congress that really don't want to see crypto succeed. But being decentralized and the people's money, it's just getting harder and harder to stop.
Totally.
Agreed, agreed. Taylor, tell us a little bit more about crypto CFOs and, touch base on like what is Water Cooler Wednesday?
So that was one of the first initiatives we started when we opened up the community. Water Cooler Wednesday is a roundtable discussion that I host on the platform every Wednesday within the community. Every once a month, we normally do it open to like LinkedIn, and we do it open to the public, but normally it's exclusive to our members. And we address the topic of the day or just kind of common challenges that we have in the industry. We've done topics on valuing illiquid altcoins, which is a challenge in and of itself. We've done things on, the FTX fraud trial, challenges that we come up with as tax professionals in the space. And all these meetings are recorded and then they live in the community as well. So if you're entering the space, either if you're an investor in the space, or if you're a CPA and you want to enter the space and serve the space, we have over 60 hours of content from the Water Cooler Wednesdays as well as the CPE events that we've done. We also have a course that I just launched called Trip Around the CryptoVerse, which is a hands-on, I basically hold your hand, walk you through the entire life cycle of a DeFi tax return, everything from on-ramping fiat currency through Coinbase, through opening up a non-custodial wallet. We do some DeFi swaps on Uniswap. We do some lending and borrowing on Aave, like I mentioned before, an NFT purchase, some liquidity providing, and then we off-ramp everything and we reconcile everything manually using Polygon scan reports. So we do it all on the Polygon network, just so that it keeps the fees down because it's a layer 2 and it's very cheap to process transactions on there. And so with like $15 or $20, you can go through all of the steps with your hand being held by me, and then learn how to reconcile it all at the end. So we really feel that like initiatives like this are what's going to bring people into the field, because as anyone who's tried to learn crypto knows, the best way to learn this stuff is to do so through experience. Theory is only going to take you so far because it all seems so mystified when it's at this high level and you're talking about blockchains and cryptography and all this stuff. But to see what happens on chain after you've just pushed click and send, or you've executed a swap, and then to look at it happening on chain, you really start to notice patterns, and you can notice how to read things and follow and decipher what's happening without needing to go back to the client, for example, and asking them about what happened here. If I see a transaction that happened from Uniswap, I can know in less than a second that it's a swap, and I can know that it was this token traded for this token, and if I'm looking at thousands of transactions, rather than having to go back to the client and ask them about each one individually, it really is helpful to just know how to look at data. So Water Cooler Wednesday is one of our weekly calls. We have like I said, over 60 hours of content for people to get up to speed, and not just on like I've taken the same blockchain 101 CPE course like 100 times, given by 50 different people, right? Like we all know what a blockchain is, and to go an inch wide and a mile deep into these really highly specific topics is really what's needed in the space, I think, and that's what we're trying to provide. So Water Cooler Wednesday is one of the places we do that. We also have office hours in the community where people can jump on with me and talk things out. And other initiatives like that just help support professionals in the space.
That's wonderful. Is it just CPAs in your community, or?
So we also have like people that are adjacent to the CFO role as well. So we have legal professionals in there. The majority is accounting and tax professionals, most of whom are CPAs or EAs. But also we have insurance pros, so people who offer Web3 insurance. We have payroll folks, the folks at Rise. They're a Web3 payroll company. They're in there. We have, like I mentioned, legal professionals, so that we can kind of bridge the gap between, I don't know if people have experienced this in the cannabis industry, but it was always like, oh, talk to the accountant, no, talk to the lawyer, no, talk to the accountant. And so they would bounce back and forth, but having the conversation together with the client's interest in mind gets us away from that kind of back and forth, like, no, that's an accounting question. Well, a lot of times it's both. And so we need to kind of facilitate those discussions where we come up with the answer together so that we can see what's best for the client from multiple angles. So yeah, we have a lot of different people in the community, but the vast majority is accounting and tax professionals.
That's really cool. Does anybody have any follow-up questions regarding the community? Not at this moment. Okay, that sounds good. So, my question to you is, do you foresee standardization for the accounting industry within the crypto industry, or accounting practices within the crypto industry? Is that coming?
That's one of the missions of the CryptoCFOs community. I mean, we created a FASB response coalition within the community to have. I think we had 5 different discussions to help with a response to FASB's proposed updates, which a lot of those suggestions they took. I'm not saying that it was just us who had that impact, but there was a lot of submissions, and the community, the CryptoCFOs community, came together to discuss and kind of weigh each question individually to come up with a collective answer that made sense from a lot of different perspectives. So that's one thing that we've done. Our goal is to further accounting standards in this space. And one of the biggest challenges of supporting clients from a tax perspective as well is, if anyone has downloaded data from Kraken and Coinbase and Binance, every single one of them spits out data differently. And so if you're trying to reconcile it manually, which I don't recommend, use a tax tool. But if you're trying to look at data on chain, a lot of times it's not standardized. And so for us at CryptoCFOs, we're looking to help with best practices, and then also leveraging our influence to create standards around wallet hygiene. Similar to a bank account, right? You want to have separate bank accounts for different activities within your firm, within TradFi, but you also don't want to have too many. You don't want to be bogged down. So we talk about issues
So you don't want to co-mingle? What?
Yeah.
Corporate veil? What?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's a lot of challenges around that, as well as educating people on security issues, right? There's different levels of security for the vault that you keep in your bank versus the wallet that you walk around in on the street. And so businesses are going to have different requirements for that sort of stuff as well. So, your hot wallet or your exchange wallet may be for more convenient use, but it's not going to hold all of your funds. And then you may have some stuff in cold storage for like larger amounts that you can still access easily. And then you'll also have multi-sig for like big purchases. So, yeah, I think that standardizing practices and helping businesses understand what's the best way for me to set things up so that I can make sure that, from an accounting perspective, I'm protected. Who holds the keys, right? Does the CFO hold all the keys to all the wallets? I don't,
Or is there a multi sign-off, things like that?
So yeah, so it's important to kind of weigh all these decisions. And I think that that's the goal of the community, is to continue to develop those best practices.
Matt, did you have a comment?
No, I just think it's very refreshing to hear that. I mean, how receptive have you found a lot of CPAs to kind of what you're doing in your community? Because I know, like, on the flip side, where you talk to your standard financial advisors, a lot of them wouldn't want to touch Bitcoin, or maybe they do now more with ETF. But how have you found that reception? Has it been a little chilly or a little bit more warm than you thought?
So in the first year of developing the community, our strategy so far has been really building a core foundation of accounting and tax pros that are existing in the community, in the crypto realm. So far we've been kind of like preaching to the choir a little bit, because it's all people who are involved, and they want to come together to create best practices. But as we reach out, like part of our Q1 strategy, we're launching a crypto tax and accounting conference in February. the week of February 19th. That's going to be announced early next week. So you heard it here first. But our goal with that is to really go after the Web 2 accounting and tax professionals. So I'll have a better answer for you on that after Q1 of 2024. But now that we've built the solid foundation, our goal is really to go after those Web 2 folks and really get them onboarded. And I think that the momentum that the halving brings, as well as the ETF filing, the biggest winner of the Bitcoin ETF was Ethereum, right? Because really, like, I think a lot of the ETF news was already baked into the price of Bitcoin, as we saw with the kind of lackluster performance of Bitcoin over, I mean, not lackluster, but trading sideways almost after the ETF was approved. But yeah, I think that the focus that the industry is going to get over the next year is really going to help propel us as a community, and we strategically in the bear market built around the existing pros to be in a position to really offer great community to those folks that are entering the space in 2024 in this bull run.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So this conference coming up, is it going to be online, in person?
Yeah, it's going to be a fully virtual conference. And we so far have 15 hours of CPE scheduled throughout the course of the week. And because we're a global community, we're going to have vendor partners that will be hosting events throughout the 24-hour period. Obviously, a lot of the CPE will be focused in the time zones of the US, but we'll have like highly specialized CPE that's going to occur throughout the course. And then we'll also do a rerun of our trip around the CryptoVerse, which is the 3-hour CPE course that I just mentioned earlier. So we have, I won't announce all of the vendor partners that are joining as sponsors, but you'll learn about that early next week. And we're really excited about it because this is our way of kind of hopefully attracting a lot of Web 2 accountants that are maybe they're the crypto curious. I call them the no coin newbies, the crypto curious, and the DeFi degens. So we're kind of trying to pitch to all of them and have something for everyone. So yeah, I think our goal is to have over 25 hours of CPE by the time the conference launches, and that's going to happen in a little over a month. So the week of February 19th. So keep an eye out for that as well.
Most definitely, we'll keep an eye on that. That's super exciting. We should definitely make sure I introduce you to Daniel Hood, who is the editor-in-chief of Accounting Today, because that is something that would be right down their alley. He was actually a guest speaker on our show a few weeks back, so I'll definitely do that introduction for you. Now, are there any other tips or tricks that you would like to, throw out there for accountants that you may have not have, touched base on?
Absolutely. So I think that the biggest thing to think about when you're entering into the crypto space is to ignore that it's crypto. It's weird to say, but just pretend like it's a traditional asset and then like look at it through that frame. And I guess the best example of that is like if you get paid in Bitcoin, you have income, right? And so if you're getting paid by a US company, you're going to get a W-2 for the fair value of that Bitcoin on the day that you received it, right? And so ultimately, it doesn't matter that it's Bitcoin. When you sell that Bitcoin later down the road, you're going to have a capital gain on it. But I think that the best two pieces of advice I would give is look at it through the lens of just pretend this has nothing to do with crypto and look at it as just an asset. And then also get your hands dirty. The only way to really truly understand this space is to mess around, and it's not expensive to do so. You don't have to risk your life savings. I think people are scared of operating in the crypto world because they've heard of all these scams and things that happen. If you take your security into your own hands, you can keep your assets very safe. And if you are just looking to mess around, there are lots of chains like Polygon is a layer 2 of the Ethereum network. You have Binance Smart Chain, you have Optimism, you have Arbitrum, you have Avalanche. You have a lot of different chains that are incredibly cheap. You have Solana to operate on, and you can mess around and you can learn about the industry with $10. And you can do all types of transactions and follow the flow of funds. So yeah, I would say, look at it as if it's not crypto, and then get your hands dirty, become a DeFi degen. And it doesn't take a lot of money to do so.
That is great advice. I actually just recently got paid on the Arbitrum. So that was pretty interesting. but I've been paid in crypto a few times now, and that was the first time for that chain. So learning new things every day. What about you? Do you accept payment in crypto?
Yes, we do. We accept payment in crypto. We own CryptoCFOs.eth, so we have an ENS domain as well. It's really cool when you're able to use things like that. For those who aren't familiar, you can basically replace your public key with a almost like a website domain that just easier to type in for people. So we have CryptoCFOs.eth, and yeah, we accept crypto as payment. And we actually prefer that a lot of times. But yeah.
That is so cool. I actually have a Pancake Capital with my partner .eth. So it's
Nice.
pretty interesting. Yeah, I love having that on the blockchain. It's super cool, easy to be paid. But that's interesting. Does anybody else on here get paid in crypto? No? Matt?
I don't. I'm happy to accept any monies you'd like to send my way in crypto, but yeah, but no, I think it's fantastic. Well, that's practicing what you preach. And once again, great advice for getting your hands dirty. I mean, that's how I learned. And you could do it for a very little amount of money. And that way, if somehow something bad happens, you lose $10, $20 or whatever you've allocated towards that. And you'd be surprised how quickly you'd be able to pick it up. So
Yeah, we would also accept crypto as payment.
Good to know, Kurt. Good to know. Do we have any other questions, comments before we wrap up here in a minute from any of our panelists?
I'd just love to just say, if anyone wants to get involved with the CryptoCFOs community, they can reach out to me directly. We have a couple of different membership tiers and things like that. And we'll be opening up an investor tier as well. So if you're just an investor in the industry and you want some help from our 300 plus accounting and tax pros, we're going to be opening that up in Q1 as well. So one of our methods of membership is our NFT that we sell on OpenSea, our account Ant NFT. So if you're interested in that, that gets you lifetime access to our community as well. Yeah. If anyone's interested in joining the community, shoot me a message. I'm happy to chat about that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I can attest that I love CryptoCFOs. There is so much great information and knowledge circulating within those 300 CPAs, and they're always posting, great content. It's fantastic. So if you're a CPA looking to get into the industry, or you're already in the industry, if you're an attorney, if you're serving the industry, the crypto industry in any way, you definitely need to reach out to Taylor and his team and check that out. Taylor, thank you again so much for joining us today on the CryptoCannaVerse show. We greatly appreciate your knowledge. Jordan, thank you for being our guest co-host. If you guys have any questions for Jordan, please reach out to him. Jordan Tritt, he's on LinkedIn, and he is also is it thepanthergroup.com? Is that right?
.co, no M there, just panthergroup.co. Yeah.
.co. You were going to have to launch one .io and then .eth.
All right. We'll get there.
Awesome. And thank you for our thought leaders on the show. We appreciate you. Alan, can you please close in prayer?
Yes. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Jordan, for coming on. Let's bow our heads and pray. Heavenly gracious Father, Lord, thank you so much for a wonderful group today that can inspire and help each other grow in many other ways. Continue to lead this group in all things that we do. Continue to add a lot of value to each other and help each other along the way. And praying for this weekend, you be with us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic weekend.